Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh, Lord, yeah.
Joe Biden announces a massive package of sanctions to go against Russia for their quote-unquote invasion of the Ukraine, and we'll talk just a bit about the definitions of that too, because there are a lot of people that are jumping and running to make sure that you know that this is an invasion, and this is a direct result of what happened with their Russia putting in the orange Hitler. But we're going to talk a lot about Russia and the Ukraine here today, and probably not a lot of anything else here, but if we do have to clear this topic and get back out, what else do we have here? The fences go back up, and the National Guard is deployed. That's actually part of the reason I'm late right now, is because I went back and tried to find information on the National Guard being deployed, but the National Guard is deployed right now, ready to go for DC, for the trucker convoy over there, so we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that. The Don't Say Gay bill is being edited once again, so we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. And a white Democratic state rep actually uses the N-word multiple times in a statement. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, heads that I just talked to without my microphone on. We are on take 2 right now, and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and I feel like I say we have a lot to get to today, a lot, because we do. And some of this we can go over, some of this we can skip over, some of this we can just gloss over here right now, because a lot of it is going to be just the exact same bullshit. But yeah, we've got a lot to get to today, and the Ukraine thing is popping off. But more importantly, and this I think is the more important part of this, we can, I don't know why Kiev is so desperate to hang on to a population that clearly doesn't want to be a part of their country. A, pay attention to what's going to happen in this country, but B, one of the other things to look at when we see this is, yeah, we can bicker over the land all day because that does seem to be the main industrial region of Ukraine. And we can bicker about that because I think that Kiev should, especially in the state of their economy that they are, should be able to hold on to their means of production. If the people want to go somewhere else, that's all on them, but definitely should be able to hold on to their means of production. But the cultural shift and the difference that's going on in this country, that's going to be the main part of this. We'll go over the dry details of what's happening in the Ukraine, and we'll talk about the sanctions, but the deep divide that this is putting in this country and the excuse that Twitter Democrats and what few fans Biden has left now has to come back and say that anybody who's against them is in favor of Russia going back and invading. And I still have to question, is there actually an invasion? Is there something going on there? Or is this an actual separatist region, an independent region, like when we declared independence as well, and Russia's sending out foreign aid, which I don't necessarily agree with either. I think they should be sending out aid in the form of not troops. Money maybe, but not troops. Because that's going to make this, well, even messier. We're going to get into a lot of this here, but before we get started, guys, make sure you go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. The fundraiser is out. I do need to do some tweaking, so I got to contact them. But the fundraiser is out. We are getting ready to raise some money for turnsofpagesproductions.com for startup costs. I actually got a call from them. I got a voicemail, I listened to it yesterday, and they really are a Christian platform. The woman on the voicemail sat and said a prayer for me and for our business to go get started, which I thought was kind of incredible. And it wasn't a recording. Like, the woman was tripping over her words and a whole lot of other stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool. That they actually sent somebody back out of here. And just the popularity that this website, the number of calls that they have to make at this point. The popularity of this website is just exploding. And good on them. And I hope that the people that are calling and making the prayers aren't too overwhelmed at this point. I really do. But, I mean, yeah, just the explosion of this here. I'm looking forward to using them. I'm looking forward to giving them a little bit of donation back up off the top of our donation because they're good. And I'm very impressed with them. However, they have my government name at the front of the fundraiser, and we got to get that scrubbed. Or at least see if we can get that scrubbed. And it's not just for the fact that we have, I mean, enough of you guys have seen my last name already. I'm not going to say it on air right now. But because of errors and because of the way that they do, sign in now, use this account or this account, and one of them, because it's work-related, has my last name on it. Enough of you guys have seen my last name. I'm not that worried about it. But we got to see if we can't get my first name off of there. That's just something we've got to do. But, yeah, as for right now, fundraiser's up, it's live. If I know you personally, we'll get it out there, but until I can go and see if I can get that scrubbed. If I can't get that scrubbed, I can't get it scrubbed. And we will continue to donate. But we will see if we can't go out and get that scrubbed and get it out of there and get some funds going up off of here. I'm very excited to look forward and work with this company. But as far as Turns of Pages Productions, also keep in mind that you can go and check out the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the new upcoming project with Britt and Sean Hickman, and the Porch Boys, who will not be on tonight, or they weren't on last night, rather. They will be on Friday. And no more, as far as I understand, the message that came out of Daily Ignoramus, no more Daily Ignoramus now for the next couple of weeks as he is going to PAC. So look forward to that, and we'll possibly see some live streams up out of that as well. So we will see what's going on with that. Go check out the website. Start page for now, but turnsofpagesproductions.com. Also, announcement before we go here is to make sure you guys go check out our new Rumble over for Contemporary and KTZed Redemption. Yeah, that's right. Everything that we put up right now goes on to Rumble. No views yet on the last KTZed Redemption, but go check out the channel, subscribe to the channel, check your replays out over there. You don't have to check them out on YouTube anymore. We don't have to be beholden to them because they suck. But you can go check out Rumble. I got to go see why yesterday's episode hasn't uploaded yet, but we'll see what's happening with that. Let's add that link to the chat there so you guys can see that. But definitely go and check that out. It's going to be a great time. Yeah, as far as YouTube goes, I mean, they're going to fucking ding me for the fact that I had War Pigs playing in the beginning of this. And probably a bunch of other things. I don't see yesterday's episode up here yet, so I'm willing to bet that I got caught in processing over on the YouTube side. I'm willing to bet that I said something that Susan Wojcicki didn't like, so go check that out, though, turnsofpagesproductions.com. Plus, the new Rumble site as well. All right, let's get into finance here for the morning. The Dow was down yesterday, but I didn't come back to the original start page until after they reset everything here. But the Dow was down to 33,596.61, dropping on fears of an open armed conflict with Russia that are probably valid. That's probably something that the investor should be paying attention to. Now, the futures are showing that they're they're changing the losses here, and they're turning and reversing. With sanctions on a big trading partner, I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or something that's sustainable, but we will see what happens there. And again, I feel a lot of these more left-wing investors are desperate for the need to make sure that the stock market looks good coming forward here, so I'm willing to bet that they're buying with fear right now to try to prop these numbers up, but that's all speculation. Of course, we don't know what's happening with this, so we can't be in other people's minds. On Bitcoin, Bitcoin is at 37,866.90. That was last night. Let's get a refresh, see what it did overnight. Whoa, it popped overnight here to 39,028 US dollars and 10 US cents. It jumped up 776 US dollars and 70 US cents, or 2.03% overnight. So that's actually kind of impressive. Pretty happy to see that. Well, it was more than 2%. I don't know. Yeah, because it had dropped down to here, and now it came back up to here. But regardless, apparently some people overnight made some money off some Bitcoin, so that's kind of cool for you guys. I still wouldn't take Bitcoin myself personally, but I'm interested in other cryptocurrencies. We will see what happens with that. On your metal prices, copper is on the rise again. Steel is also on the rise. Aluminum still on the fall. All copper plays are in the green. All steel plays are in the green, as always. Aluminum is mixed. Siding is down. Aluminum copper fin is down. Regular radiators are up. Cans are up. Cans turned up. That's cool. Sheet aluminum is down. Rims are up. Electric motors are down. Ballasts are down. Lead is up. Batteries are down. Catalytic converters remain in the same place that they have been for quite a while, with small 4 and cat is up, and the other 4 are down. Compressors are up. Alternators are up. Carbide is up. Hard drives are down. Motherboards are up. Power supplies are down. Low-grade boards are down. PC tower is down. Remember, these are national averages. These are not your local scrap metal prices. Do check in with your local scrap yards before you bring anything in, so you are not surprised by the price that you're paid there. Let's see what IBD has to say. I need to breathe when I talk. Dow futures climb after stock market sell-off. Apple, Tesla set to rebound. From Scott Latonin. Dow futures climbed Wednesday morning as the major stock indices look to rebound from Tuesday's stock market sell-off. Apple and Tesla look to bounce back from sharp losses, and Cadence Design Systems, Diamondback Energy, Matador Resources, Lowe's, Mosaic, and Palo Alto Networks were key earnings movers ahead of Wednesday's open. My God, it's almost March. In April, we're going to start doing this earnings thing all over again, and we're still doing earnings. Among the Dow leaders, Apple rose 1%, and Microsoft traded up 1.1% in today's stock market. American Express, a Dow stock to watch, is still in a buy range following recent breakout. EV maker Tesla rallied nearly 2% in pre-market Wednesday, looking to snap a 3-day losing streak. Amid a volatile stock market rally, Anthem, Northern Oil and Gas, and O'Reilly Automotive are among Wednesday's top stocks to watch. All three are in or near new buy zones. Microsoft and Tesla are on IBD leaderboard stocks. O'Reilly is featured in this week's Stocks Near a Buy Zone column. I got a feeling that with vehicle prices and the fact that we don't know what's going to be happening in the next few years, or even in the next few months, a lot of people are looking to go and fix their cars right now before the rest of the market tanks out and drops out entirely. But the mechanics bill is really expensive, even though a lot of mechanics do go out to O'Reilly's as well. But the mechanics bill is really expensive, and it's too expensive to go buy a new car. Have you seen new car prices lately? All right, on the Dow Jones today, ahead of the stock market open Wednesday, futures traded up 0.6%. That's actually a little surprising. While the S&P rallied 0.8%, NASDAQ futures were up 1.2% in morning trade. Holy shit. Among ETFs, the NASDAQ 100 Tracker Invesco QQQ Trust rose 1%. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF moved up 0.7% before Wednesday's gain. The 10-year Treasury yield ticked up to 1.97% Wednesday morning. On Tuesday, the 10-year Treasury yield closed just below 1.95%. Meanwhile, U.S. oil prices dropped almost 1% Wednesday, with West Texas Intermediate crude falling below $92 a barrel. That's actually a little bit surprising. But I did go back and fill up because I do anticipate that is going to be going up a little bit more, and it has gone up over the last 24 hours. It was 312 when I went by the gas station yesterday, and it was up to 324 when I went back up and filled up last night. On Wednesday, Ukraine declared a state of emergency and called for its citizens to leave Russia due to growing threat of war. Earlier this week, Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized the independence of two Russian-led breakaway regions of the Ukraine, and the West responded with modest penalties. So that's what we see coming off that. Let's grab one from CNN, who definitely wants the best for you and doesn't want to scare you into just staying glued to CNN. Dow futures climb after stock market sell. Whoops, wrong article. I just read that article. I thought I closed that article. Global markets rebound as West punishes Russia with modest sanctions. From Laura He. Global markets are rebounding and oil prices are easing off after the United States and its allies hit Russia with only a limited first wave of sanctions over what President Biden described as the beginning of an invasion of Ukraine. European stocks surged early trading after the West kept its most punishing sanctions in reserve in an attempt to deter further aggression by Moscow. The FTSE 100 added a 0.6% in London, Germany's DAX 30 increased 1.3%, and France's CAC 40 surged 1.6%. In Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng ended up 0.6% after declining to 2.8% on Tuesday, its biggest daily loss in 5 months. China's Shanghai Composite Index rose 0.9%. Japan's stock market was closed for the holiday. Dow futures were up 235 points or 0.7%. S&P 500 and NASDAQ were up 0.8% and 1.1%, respectively. A lot of the numbers we've seen already here. Biden on Tuesday laid out what he called the first tranche of U.S. sanctions against Russia, including on two financial institutions, Russia's sovereign debt, and Russian elites and their family members. This is the beginning of an invasion, and therefore this is the beginning of our response, a senior U.S. administration official said. If Putin escalates further, we will escalate further using both financial sanctions and export controls, which we have yet to unveil. Other Western nations also announced retaliatory moves against Russia, with Germany on Tuesday halting certification of the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was built by Gazprom to transport natural gas directly from Russia to Germany. Punitive measures on Russia may be deemed as less aggressive than expected, and some expectations are pointing to a standstill for now, wrote Yip Jung Rong, a Singapore-based market strategist for IG Group, in a research note on Wednesday. He pointed out that the harsher impact from the penalties may come from the sovereign debt sanctions, which effectively cut Russia off from the Western financing, but the other sanctions on state-owned banks and Russian elites seem to be deemed as relatively modest by markets. That said, the situation remains highly volatile and uncertain, and any negative news flow may potentially throw markets into turmoil, Yip added. Wednesday's uptick was in sharp contrast with the previous trading day when global stock markets tumbled and crude prices surged to $99 a barrel after Russia ordered troops into parts of the eastern Ukraine. The Dow closed down nearly 483 points or 1.4%. The S&P 500 finished the day 1% lower, entering a correction defined by a 10% drop from its most recent peak. The Nasdaq shed 1.2%. So that's what's happening in finance right now. We got to get into the main news of the day, but we're going to start today with a meme that I also found right before going live, like immediately. I went over, I hit the go live button, and I looked over on the other screen over here, and I saw Tim Pool talking about, and I still, even though I don't care for him, I still follow Tim Pool talking about the National Guard over in DC that we'll talk about later, and this meme right here. The damn dirty centrists, our own Arvold. I've never seen such an ineffectual president since Jimmy Carter. In fact, Biden has been worse in 1 year than Carter was in 4. With the officer, Vladimir Putin, kneeling on the neck of Biden, who says, I can't, you know, the thing. Thank you, Arvold. All right, let's get into this. So, we're going to start with this one here that was talked about by one of our new friends over on the Twitch side, who didn't follow, unfortunately. No, yeah, he did. I can see it. Martin Router King followed yesterday and also pointed out that this was happening, I go back. I don't do live chat live on air, but I do go back and read everything that you guys put in the live chat. So I want you guys to know that, and I do encourage everyone else to go back and chat more in the live chat because I do see what you guys are saying. Russian foreign minister says Ukraine has no right to sovereignty. Because of course he does. Apparently that's it. Nothing else to say on that one, apparently. That's from the Kiev Independent News Desk. But, propagandistically, of course he's going to believe that because that's in favor of them. And again, strategically, I don't know what it is that Russia would want with the Ukraine. I mean, the treaty was signed, they were allowed to be out into their own. So yes, they do have a right to sovereignty. They absolutely do. They were a sovereign nation before Russia came in with the Soviet Union and took them over. And under the treaty, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, they were allowed to go back and be another sovereign nation. Sounds to me like they have a right to sovereignty. And furthermore, the people have the right to decide whether they want to be a part of Russia or if they want to be a part of Kiev. And that's been a part of the problem. Because, I mean, when I look at this and I see what it is that Russia's trying to do to try to push out and propagandistically say, when I look back at this, I see, okay, that's cool. It's like the wall in East Germany that was designed to keep people in and not keep people out. Because they didn't want people running away to capitalism to go back and try to build a fortune. They wanted the workers to stay under communism. But after that, it raises the question that I asked over on Twitter this morning while I was getting the last little bit of remnants prep for this. The last question that I had off of this was, why exactly is it? And this is a serious question. Why is Kiev so concerned with keeping dissidents in that clearly don't want to be a part of the Ukraine? Now, we can dicker and bicker over the land. Because a lot of their, again, as I said at the top of the show, their means of production are in that area. Their factories, their industrial sector, a lot of that is in that particular region. If the people don't want to be there, that's fine. We can work something out. Say, hey, they want to be Russian? Here you go. Hey, Vlad, come over here. Let's talk about this. These people don't want to be a part of my nation. They're really unhappy. They want to be a part of your nation here. Can we work something out where they have, they have immigration? Can we work something out? If you want them, you seem to be very willing to protect them anyway. So let's just let these people out of here. Let's let them go back to there. You clearly have a vested interest in having these people. That's fine. Leave the land alone. Leave my border. Oh, am I 17 again? Leave my border. Get your people out of the Luhansk region. Let me move some people in there that want to be factory workers. And hey, have these people. Again, we can dicker over the land and the ownership of that. Because I'm sure that a lot of them don't want to leave their houses behind in that region. But why is Kiev, especially with Moscow saying that Ukraine itself doesn't have any right to sovereignty, why is Kiev telling these people that they don't have a right to sovereignty either? But we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. A little bit of stuff that's happening as far as action goes to start off with. From the Hill, Ukraine president orders reservists to be drafted. From Monique Beals. Ukraine on Wednesday began drafting reservists age 18 to 60 onto its armed forces as the country prepares for possible invasion by the Ukraine. Those conscripts would serve a maximum period of 1 year, Reuters noted. On Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ruled out a general mobilization in addition to announcing that he would introduce the conscription of reservists, according to the news service. There's no need for general mobilization today. We need to promptly replenish the Ukrainian army and other military formations, the president said. As the Supreme Commander and Chief of the Armed Forces of the Ukraine, I issued a decree on the conscription of reservists during a special period, he added. Zelensky also said his decisions were to increase readiness of Ukrainian army for all possible changes and criticized the countries that have removed their embassies from the country. We'll talk about that. Just hold on a sec. Zelensky's comments come after Russia President Vladimir Putin recognized the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic of Eastern Ukraine as independent and ordered troops into Ukraine's Donbas region earlier on in the week. Also something I disagree with. As a result of Putin's moves, President Brandon announced sanctions as Russia's sovereign debt and Russian elites and their family members, as well as Russian financial institutions. We'll talk about that. He's setting up a rationale to take more territory by force, in my view, Biden said of Putin on Tuesday. This is the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, man. Come on. If Russia goes further with this invasion, we stand prepared to go further with as with sanctions, the president added. So that's what's going on right now. I mean, Zelensky, for what he actually should be doing right now, actually this is the route that he should be taking. I'm saying that right now. If he's got a threat that something is going to come in and there's going to be an invasion of his country, he should be setting up for it. That is understandable. And there's a lot that's going on here. There are avenues to this where I have to start to wonder if this isn't Europe itself preparing for a war. Now, there are ideas and there are strategies that go along with this. Now, if the entire mainstream media, and you guys all watch CNN the rest of the way around the world too, if the entirety of the mainstream media is telling you that Russia is getting ready to brutally take Kiev, the Japanese, maybe not the Chinese because they're somewhat allied with Russia, but the Japanese, the African nations that have diplomatic ties over in the Ukraine, a lot of the EU people, pretty much everybody who has diplomatic ties over there, it would be somewhat salient to go back out and get some of your diplomatic president, at least their families. Leave the diplomats there, but as of right now, we're ending commercial flights to and from Kiev and Ukraine in general because they're afraid of another Moldova flight. What was it? Moldova flight getting shot down? They're afraid of another airplane getting shot down, essentially. But also crippling parts of Ukraine's import and export economy. Wow, I can talk this morning. And then we also look at the fact that with that as well, if they start taking all of the diplomats out and moving them out to Poland, people who professionally negotiate, take them out to Poland or other places out into Europe to get evacuated from the rest of Europe proper, that also puts Kiev in a crippling situation where they can't really move on anything. They don't have the diplomats from the other countries along with their own diplomats to try to work this out diplomatically. This really does feel a lot to me like the powers that be, whoever they are, have been trying to make this look as juicy as it can to try to get Russia to go back in. And of course, when we look back, I mean, it's been propagandized since, well, basically since 2015, because of course we can't go back to 2012 because Barack stood up there on the stage and looked at Mitt Romney and said, why do you think that Russia is such a geopolitical? Whoa, hey, we should be happy to go and trade with Russia. Hey, Mitt, the 80s called. They want their foreign policy back. So that's what we see coming off of that from the Associated Press. Biden and Putin signal bigger confrontation ahead over Ukraine. From Vladimir Isachenkov, Uros Karmanow, Amar Madani, and Eric Tucker. The East-West face-off over Ukraine escalated dramatically Tuesday, with Russian lawmakers authorizing President Vladimir Putin to use military force outside of his country, and U.S. President Joe Biden and European leaders responding by slapping sanctions against Russian oligarchs and banks. By the way, they use that word on purpose for the propaganda. Oligarchs? Yeah, they definitely use that word on purpose. Both leaders signaled that an even bigger confrontation could lie ahead. Putin has yet to unleash the force of 150,000 troops massed at three sides of Ukraine, while Biden held back on even tougher sanctions that could cause economic turmoil for Russia, but said that they would go ahead if there were further aggression. The measure is accompanied by the repositioning of additional U.S. troops to the Baltic nations on NATO's eastern flank. Bordering Russia, it came as Russian forces rolled into rebel-held areas in eastern Ukraine, after Putin said he was recognizing the independence of the separatist regions in defiance of the U.S. and European demands. Now see, that's actually what they did with the repositioning of the troops. That's a smart move. Don't put them in the Ukraine, don't put them on the front lines, but start deploying people back out. If this is really that big of a problem with you. Now, if I was the president, I would not have let this get to a point where this was a problem to me, but if this is really a problem to you, then flex your muscles a little bit. Start showing, hey, we can deploy people from all over the world into these areas. Do you really want to fuck around and find out? And I said that all the way back to the beginning. You know, we have allied bases in places like Poland and Germany, where they love the Americans over there. Some of them still hate the Americans, but they love Americans over there because Americans like to go over there and spend money. So give these places the opportunity to come back and make some money off the American soldiers that are just getting out on deployment right now, and still flex your muscles a little bit. The measures came as Russia rolled into rebel-held areas in eastern Ukraine after Putin said he was recognizing the independence of the separatist regions in defiance of U.S. and European demands, which is, to me, that's fine. If you want to get out there and say, yes, I recognize, these are sovereign nations, these are good people, I like these people. We do good things for people, we help support them, we give them money, we sell them arms. That's one thing. But honestly, if you want to avoid a war, I would not have put the troops into there. Sell them the guns. Absolutely do that, especially if they're an independent nation. Sell them the guns. But don't put your troops there, because that does seem like an act of aggression. Speaking of the White House, Biden said the Kremlin had flagrantly violated international law. And what he called the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, he warned of more sanctions if Putin went further. I don't know if this is going to be the full press conference or not, but let's open this up and see what it is. Yeah, this is a 3-minute section. So let's listen to a little bit of this.
None of us should be fooled. None of us will be fooled. There is no justification. Further Russian assault in Ukraine remains a severe threat in the days ahead. And if Russia proceeds, it is Russia and Russia alone that bears the responsibility. Yesterday, Vladimir Putin recognized 2 regions of Ukraine as independent states. And he bizarrely asserted that these regions are no longer part of Ukraine and their sovereign territory. To put it simply, Russia just announced that it is carving out a big chunk of Ukraine. He's setting up a rationale to take more territory by force, in my view. And if we listened to his speech last night, and many of you did, I know, he's setting up a rationale to go much further. This is the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm going to begin to impose sanctions in response far beyond the steps we and our allies and partners implemented in 2014. And if Russia goes further with this invasion, we stand prepared to go further as with sanctions. Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries on territory that belong to his neighbors? This is a flagrant violation of international law and it demands a firm response from the international community. So today, I'm announcing the first tranche.
So, as far as that goes, it's to my understanding that it wasn't Putin that recognized. Well, he recognized it, but he didn't name them as independent nations. It's to my understanding that they did that themselves. That's the way that I understand the mechanics that went through there. Now, I'm sure that Putin, if they do become independent nations, is chomping at the bit to come back and come in and say, You give up sovereignty to me, and I make sure you are protected from Kiev. I'm sure that he's sitting there waiting and chomping at the bit to do that. But yeah, as far as I know, he wasn't the one that came out and said, no, I now name these sovereign nations, because nobody does give him the right to do that. As far as I know, they did that themselves.
Of sanctions to impose costs on Russia in response to their actions yesterday. These have been closely coordinated with our allies and partners and will continue to escalate sanctions if Russia escalates. We're implementing full blocking sanctions on two large Russian financial institutions, VEB and their military bank. We're implementing comprehensive sanctions on Russia's sovereign debt. That means we've cut off Russia's government from Western financing. It can no longer raise money from the West and cannot trade in its new debt on our markets or European markets either. Starting tomorrow and continuing in the days ahead, we'll also impose sanctions on Russia's elites and their family members. They share in the corrupt gains of the Kremlin policies and should share in the pain as well. As Russia contemplates its next move, we have our next move prepared as well. Russia will pay an even steeper price if it continues its aggression, including additional sanctions. The United States will continue to provide defensive assistance to Ukraine in the meantime, and will continue to reinforce and reassure our NATO allies. Today, in response to Russia's admission that it will not withdraw its forces from Belarus, I have authorized additional movements of U.S. forces and equipment already stationed in Europe to strengthen our Baltic allies, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Let me be clear, these are totally defensive moves on our part. We have no intention of fighting Russia. We want
We've got a vested interest in the Ukraine, and we hate the fact and denounce the fact that Russia did this, and we're going to move our troops around to surround the Russian troops, but we have no intention of fighting Russia.
I want to send an unmistakable message, though, that the United States, together with our allies, will defend every inch of NATO territory.
So that's what it is that he has to say with that. So, yeah. We got that. Hopes for diplomatic resolution to the threat of invasion, which the U.S. officials for weeks portrayed as all but inevitable, thanks to the mainstream media, appeared to evaporate. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken canceled plans for a Thursday meeting in Geneva with his Russian counterpart, saying that it would not be productive and that Russia's actions indicated Moscow was not serious about a peaceful path to resolving the crisis. Western nations sought to present a unified front, with more than 24 European Union members unanimously agreeing to levy their own initial set of sanctions against Russian officials. Germany also said it was halting the process of certifying the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Hey, Germany, if you put some pressure on the old man, we might get our Nord Stream 2 pipeline, or not our Nord Stream, our Keystone pipeline back. Because, hey, they're going to be looking for more natural gas. A lucrative deal, long sought by Moscow, but criticized by the U.S. for increasing Europe's reliance on Russian energy, which is a big part of the reason that if this does turn out into a mess, a big part of the reason that we're in the mess that we're in right now. However, I do believe that the most important thing we could have done, and honestly, this could have all been over at this point. Long ago, this could have all been over. If back in the late 50s and early 60s, we would have just gone over and turned over Moose and Squirrel to Boris and Natasha, we probably wouldn't be in this mess right now. Give us moose and squirrel. But that's what we have off of that. From the New York Post, Russian tanks roll through the outskirts of Donetsk while Ukraine calls on military reserves. Tanks and other heavy military machinery roar through the outskirts of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine for a second consecutive night, while Ukraine's president called up his military reserves as Europe's worst crisis in decades appeared to be taking a turn towards all-out war. The tanks bore no identifying insignia, but they were first spotted hours after. Interesting! Really? There's no identifying insignia there? Does that mean that people on both sides will think that it's the other side? The Ukrainians will think that they're Russian tanks, and the Russians will think that they're Ukrainian tanks? I wonder whose tanks they actually are. But were first spotted hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized two rebel-held enclaves in Europe as independent states and dispatched peacekeeping troops along his western border late Monday. There was no way to determine how many Russian forces have entered eastern Ukraine over the past 24 hours, but some observers fear thousands may already be on Ukrainian soil. That's disputed soil, ready to carry out a large-scale attack once orders are given. No identifying insignia, you say. That's interesting. Yeah, because usually militaries are pretty much right out there and saying, hey, let's make it clear whose tank this is so that our allies don't fucking shoot at us. In a videotaped address on Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his government in Kiev needed to quickly add additional staff to the Ukrainian army and other military formations, though he added that there's no need for full mobilization. Zelensky said his decree applied only to those assigned to the so-called Operational Reserve, which is typically activated during ongoing hostilities and covers a special period of time, without clarifying what that means. The National Security and Defense Council Secretary Oleksiy Danilov said earlier this year that Ukraine can call up to 2.5 million people. Jeez. Ukrainians are a peaceful nation, Zelensky said. We want silence, but if we keep silent today, we disappear tomorrow. No identifying information, you say. Blinken? Blinken, is that you? Moving these troops around? Is that you putting stuff out there to try to goad people into more conflict? The reserve call-up brought an end to the tension-filled day in Kiev, Moscow, and Washington, D.C., during which Biden announced what he described as the first tranche of sanctions targeting Russia after Putin recognized two breakaway regions in Ukraine as independent states, hours after the European Union and the UK announced similar punishment packages. The Kremlin confirmed it considered the territory to the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic to include land held by Ukrainian government forces, raising the specter of a broader Russian attack. The German government announced it was halting approval process for Nord Stream 2 pipeline project, which would have provided Europe's largest economy with natural gas directly from Russia under the Black Sea and deprived Ukraine of lucrative gas transit fees. The Romanian government said it would be able to take in up to 500,000 refugees in the event of an all-out war between Russia and the Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who may have been controlling who's in the tank, oops, did I say that out loud? Announced that a planned Thursday meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov would be scrapped now that we see the invasion is beginning. So, and we've got some maps here seeing what's going on here. So, this is the area held by Ukraine, claimed by separatists. That's what's in the yellow. And in the hash mark, do we have a key here? Area held by Russian-backed separatists. So, and again, I mean, my question here is why hold on to this population of people? I do have questions about Kiev's role in this entire thing. Why hold on to people that clearly don't want to be there? Blinken made the announcement during a briefing with Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba, who, in a whirlwind visit to Washington, also met with Biden and Lloyd Austin. Now that we see the invasion is beginning and Russia has made clear its wholesale rejection of diplomacy, it does not make sense to go forward with that meeting at this time. Blinken told reporters at the State Department the secretary had said over the weekend that he had agreed to meet with Lavrov unless Russia invades in the meantime. I still question whether this is an invasion. I don't like the fact that this is happening, that they're going into this area that's disputed. Again, if these countries want to be independent nations, then Russia can send aid over there, but to actually send troops into this area, you can see where people are saying invasion. But that's what we see coming off of that. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Ducey and Psaki. What sanction is going to stop them? Peter Ducey hammers Psaki on response to Putin. From Virginia Kruta. And that's a very good question. It was the same question that really got asked to Kamala Harris while she was over in Germany. If he's already decided to invade, as you say, then what is it that you're going to do to stop them? How is diplomacy going to work if he's already made the decision? White House correspondent Peter Ducey challenged Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead directly on the Biden admin's apparent unwillingness to consider any response beyond sanctions to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Pointing to the fact that the threat of sanctions issued in the name of deterrence had done little to deter Putin from taking the first steps toward a full-scale invasion, Ducey asked what the White House believed more sanctions would do if Putin's plan was to redraw the map in a way that carved up Ukraine and served it to Russia. Let's listen.
The president said in the spring that Pentagon generals had briefed him that the greatest threat facing America is global warming. Is that still the assessment now that we are facing down a potential cyber war with Russia?
Well, let me first say there is no, while we are always prepared for any threat that any outside entity or country poses to the United States that relates to cyber or anything else, there is no current pending threat on as it relates to cyber. In terms of the threats you're touching on, that was a briefing from the military, so I'd point you to them.
Further,
the president said in the spring that Pentagon generals had briefed him that the greatest threat facing America is global warming. Is that still the assessment now that we are facing down a potential cyber war with Russia?
Well, let me first say there is no, while we are always prepared for any threat that any outside entity or country poses to the United States that relates to cyber or anything else, there is no current pending threat on as it relates to cyber. In terms of the threats you're touching on, that was a briefing from the military, so I'd point you to them.
And so, as far as anybody watching who's seen the coverage, it's very, at times, distressing images of Russian military movements. The number one threat facing the country right now remains global warming.
Well, Peter, I think it's important, as we're all educating the public here, to convey and reiterate the president has no intention of sending U.S. troops into Ukraine to fight in Ukraine. What we are doing is we are abiding by our obligations to our NATO allies and partners to ensure that they have the support and the resources that they need, and that is our right and our obligation as the United States.
Okay.
So that's the two of them going back and forth with each other, which, you know, I'm glad to see some of this here and some questions being asked, because what else is going to happen otherwise with a Biden press secretary? Kid gloves. Just nothing but kid gloves. We've got some more of this here. And I just want to grab this one here. Ducey, do you guys think sanctions are going to stop Putin if his goal is ultimately redraw the map, so it looks like it did 70, 80 years ago? What sanctions are going to stop them from doing that?
And why do you guys think that sanctions are going to stop Putin if his goal ultimately is to redraw the map so it looks like it did 70 or 80 years ago? What sanction is going to stop them from doing that?
Well, I think just to kind of reiterate maybe something you touched on there, for anyone who watched his speech last night, what he made clear in that speech is that he doesn't even necessarily or doesn't recognize the independence of Ukraine as a country. And that certainly gives us an indication of where his intentions are at this point in time. Sanctions can be a powerful tool. They have been in a lot of moments throughout history, and what we view them as or how we're viewing them, as we're starting high, as Dilip just conveyed here, in terms of the significance and the severity of the sanctions that were announced today. Yes, our intention is to have a deterrent effect, and there.
Which, by the way, when Biden was on the stage, said he was starting low. So you guys might want to get your stories straight. We can go back and listen to the AP article and listen to them again because it's right there.
There are, what they have done to date is completely unacceptable. There's certainly far worse that could happen. What we want to do is prevent a large-scale invasion, death and destruction across Ukraine, devastation to the Ukrainian people, and that what happens with sanctions is they work over time. They're not an end. They're not intended to max out at the beginning. They're long-lasting and sustainable, and they're intended to squeeze. But if you look at what is happening now, what President Putin has stated as his intention is he wants to divide NATO. The opposite of that has happened, Peter. He also wanted a geopolitical project, Nord Stream 2, to go forward. That has not happened. He wants to make sure there is a vibrant economy.
Also, Biden wanted the Nord Stream 2 to go forward. Reminder.
For the Russian people. They're not on that track. So his intentions and his objectives are not playing out.
I do have to say that I'm just a little bit. Let's say what's the word I want to use? Nervous about the fact that Biden is so intent to squeeze a country that has nuclear capabilities. That's something I'm not real comfortable with. Oh, unless I guess I do want to play Fallout in real life though. So, hey, Smoothskin, you got any caps? I need some caps to get some liquor. Let's keep going. Russia troops in Ukraine's Donbass won't trigger broader sanctions, according to a U.S. official. From Jeff Mason and Idris Ali, President Putin's decision to send troops into, he called peacemakers into breakaway regions of Ukraine did not constitute a further invasion that would trigger a broader sanctions package, a Biden admin official told Reuters on Monday, but the White House believes a full invasion could come at any time. Which, this is Schrodinger's invasion right here. Now, for the purposes, and we don't have to go much further into this here because a lot of this is still review, but a lot of what we see off of this here, this, like I said, Schrodinger's invasion, because of the foreign policy and the diplomacy department of this is not a full invasion, so we don't need to go with the big sanctions, the massive sanctions off of this. But as we sit back and propagandize to our people that Russia is the most evil entity in the world, not only because we told you that they are, but also keep in mind, remember, they brought us the evil Orange Hitler. They installed him as the evil Orange Hitler. They're the most dangerous thing in the world. To that point, this is, of course, a full invasion. It's propaganda. It always has been. From Axios, Biden sanctions Russian banks and declares Ukraine invasion has begun. That's probably the same thing we've already listened to.
This is the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, as he indicated and asked permission to be able to do from his Duma. So let's begin to, I'm going to begin to impose sanctions in response far beyond the steps we and our allies and partners implemented in 2014. And if Russia goes further with this invasion, we stand prepared to go further as with sanctions. Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries?
Yeah, we heard that already. Biden announced what he called the first tranche in a series of stiff sanctions to punish Russia for invading the Ukraine, targeting 2 Russian banks and the country's sovereign debt. Biden said Russia's recognition of two separatist republics in eastern Ukraine and decision to deploy troops there indicated Putin was carving out a big chunk of Ukraine and setting up a rationale to go further. We read all this already. That's part of the, pulling these broad things off of here is, like, if we go through some of these bigger articles here, we've seen a lot of this here. We've seen a lot of this one. Let's talk about this one that didn't archive yesterday and see what we have going on with this. Kamala Harris ripped as perpetually unprepared after presser in Munich. From Courtney O'Brien. Many observers were not inspired by Vice President Harris's trip to Munich over the weekend, arguing her press conference proved she was woefully unprepared to address geopolitical crisis brewing on Ukraine's border. And once again, she's all eager to go to Ukraine's border, but she doesn't want to go to ours. Harris traveled to Munich to meet with several European allies in hopes of securing a united front with the Russia President Vladimir Putin. Wow, I completely misread that entire sentence. Holy shit. Harris traveled to Munich to meet with several European allies in hopes of securing a united front in the event that Russia President Vladimir Putin decides to invade the Ukraine. She met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and promised severe economic sanctions if Russia releases its troops. However, both she and President Biden have said that Putin has already made up his mind on potential invasion. One particular clip of Harris addressing the press has drawn particular scorn on social media. I mean, listen guys, we're talking about potential war in Europe, Harris said. I mean, let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about. After some meandering, Harris concluded that collectively the Allies desire a diplomatic end to this. Viewers called her remarks word salad and concluded she was perpetually unprepared for the critical foreign policy moment. But unfortunately this is archived, so we can't watch the video. Let's grab one from our friends over at NPR. And they need a donation too, so make sure that you head over there. Hit that donate button because it's not your money, comrade, it's our money, and they need money to spread their communist ideals around the nation. Because capitalism would be bad, that's why you think that it's your money. So make sure you hit that donate button because they are never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Why Luhansk and Donetsk are key to understanding the latest escalation in Ukraine. From Joe Hernandez. Let's see what it is that they have to say. In the latest flare-up of crisis in the Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin on Monday recognized the independence of two breakaway regions in Ukraine's east as independent and ordered military forces to deploy there. The rebel-controlled territories, Luhansk and Donetsk, comprise a larger region called Donbas that borders Russia. The two territories have been led by pro-Russia separatists for nearly a decade. Experts warn that Putin's order for troops to carry out what he called peacekeeping functions in the region and what President Biden has now called the start of an invasion could lay the groundwork and provide the pretext for a larger Russian military incursion in the Ukraine. To understand why Luhansk and Donetsk are playing such a central role in the conflict's most recent escalation, it's worth going back to the popular uprising that kicked off the current unrest in Ukraine, which has been simmering since 2013. The Maidan Revolution led to a major political shift in the Ukraine. In November of that year, then Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych announced that he would refuse to sign an agreement with the European Union to bring the Ukraine into a free trade agreement, citing pressure from Russia. The move sparked massive protests in Ukraine, calling for Yanukovych to resign. In 2014, violence between the police and protesters in Kiev's Maidan Square left dozens dead. Yanukovych eventually fled to Russia. The Ukrainian parliament established a new government. Greeting the new government and Yanukovych's ouster as a coup, Putin sent troops into Crimea, a former Soviet republic that had been part of the Ukraine since 1954. Within days, Russia annexed Crimea despite international pressure from the US and European allies, following a referendum that apparently resulted in 97% of voters choosing to join Russia, though the results are disputed. In April 2014, fighting began just northwest of Crimea across the Sea of Azov in another pro-Russian stronghold called Donbas. Clashes soon broke out between pro-Russian rebels in Donbass and Ukrainian military forces, with about 40,000 Russian troops stationed just across the border. In a similar warning to his more recent overtures, Putin said at the time that Russia had no intention of invading Ukraine, and that it would only send troops into the country if necessary. Critics have accused Russia of aiding the insurgency in eastern Ukraine, though Moscow denies it. By late April 2014, Ukraine's interim president, Alexander Turchinov, said the government had lost control of the eastern part of the country. What followed were years of tense relations between the Ukrainian government in Kiev and the self-described Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. A 2014 referendum in the region found strong support amid residents for secession from Ukraine, and a national presidential election in the spring was marred by obstruction and in some cases violence in the breakaway east as clashes continued. So this has been going on for quite a while, and this precedes Zelensky. This actually goes right about to the time that Hunter was starting to work for, I can't think of the name of it right now, the energy company. Why can't I think of the name of it? It's on the tip of my tongue. The live chat's open if you guys want to put it in there. Burisma, thank you. But I mean, yeah, this has been going on for quite a while. Where is Burisma, by the way, in the Ukraine? I've been thinking about that for a while, and I never saw back to look it up. We'll do research right on air, I guess. It's registered in Limassol, Cyprus, but it's based in Kiev, so it's like actually in the capital. And of course, the first thing that comes up is Vox objectively explaining Hunter Biden, Burisma, Ukraine, and Joe Biden. So definitely go and get your news from Vox. They're totally objective. But I mean, going back off to this here, and this is kind of why I said and why I tweeted out what I tweeted out on Twitter. Why is Kiev so desperate to hold on to these people? Again, let's bicker and dicker over the land, because you do have a large part of your manufacturing center is in the Donbass region. I understand that. I understand you don't want to give up your factories and things like that over there. But again, if you have 1.3 million people that you can call up as reservists immediately, you can probably staff those factories pretty quickly if you needed to. So, you know, again, send your diplomat over to Moscow and say, hey, Vlad, we got these people over here. They don't like us anymore. They want to be a part of your country. Can you just make an exception and let them cross the border? Let them be a part of your country? I think that'd be cool. Could you do that for us? But that's what we have off of that. One from the Daily Wire for us. This guy and his mustache. Of course he gets to weigh in on this one. A victory for Russia. John Bolton claims Putin was waiting for a second Trump term and got the same result from Biden. From Virginia Kruta. And we can listen. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton claimed Tuesday that Russia President Vladimir Putin had undoubtedly been looking forward to former President Trump having a second term, but he said that President Biden's admin was effectively yielding the same results. The former ambassador told the UN, sat down with MSDNC anchor Andrea Mitchell, and told her that believes the current situation would ultimately translate to a victory for Russia. Let's listen. Let's listen to the war hawk trying to sell another war.
Well, I think Putin was undoubtedly waiting for a second Trump term, but he's getting effectively almost what he would have expected then. This is going to be a victory for Russia.
You think that what the Biden administration is doing, rallying the NATO allies,
it has failed.
Ambassador.
The president says it has failed.
The president says it's failed. Let's go to more war. That's what we need to do right now. Go to more wars. Yeah. You're salty still that you went for 4 years, 3 years. You went for 3 years in an admin and didn't get to go out and start a new war. From The Blaze. This is not aged well. 2-year-old Biden tweet declares Putin doesn't want me to be president. This has been making the rounds for a couple days now. From Alex Nitzberg. Amid the Russia-Ukraine situation, many on the political right have been recently highlighting a 2-year-old tweet posted on the account of then-candidate Joe Biden by one of his staffers. The tweet declared that the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, did not want Biden to become America's president. Vladimir Putin doesn't want me to be president. He doesn't want me to be our nominee. And if you're wondering why, it's because I'm the only person in this field who's ever gone toe-to-toe with him, the February 2020 tweet declared. Representative Elise Stefanik shared a screenshot of the 2-year-old post and tweeted, "Hey Twitter, I'd like to report some disinformation." Jessica O'Donnell responded to the Biden tweet by declaring, "You didn't even write this tweet. No one is afraid of you. That's pretty clear today." "How embarrassing," Katie Pavlich tweeted. "This is not aged well," the RNC noted. The tweet has been dredged up amid the situation currently unfolding between Russia and the Ukraine. So, yeah, it seems like that they really did want him to be president. But of course, that's because they have dirt on him with Burisma and Hunter Biden. Thanks again, Goats and Scars, for telling me it was Burisma. Tulsi Gabbard got in on the action. From Fox News staff. Former Democratic Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard slammed the Brandon admin on Monday on Hannity, calling out Kamala Harris's embarrassing Russia remarks, saying the vice president does not have the temperament to be the voice of the United States on the world stage. And we will read the transcript because once again we can't do the video because it's an archived article. Tulsi Gabbard, "This is embarrassing. It's hard to keep track of all those jumbles of words. It's clear she was sent there to be the voice of the United States as a purely political calculation. She has no foreign policy background for understanding. She has no concept of the cost of war. Nor does she have the temperament necessary to be the voice of the U.S. on the global stage. It's embarrassing to see this play out. She's talked about her deterrence and sanctions. How do you deter someone? By punishing them before they do it. It's simple. This is grade school understanding. If you say I'm going to punish you before you do something, wouldn't a kid say, fine, I might as well do it anyway? This is not rocket science. Second, talking about incurring costs. Kamala and Joe have said that we're going to incur a cost. They won't pay the price. They're multimillionaires. The power elite will not be negatively affected, which is very, very true, by the way. Who will pay the price? It's hardworking Americans across the country and people around the world who are already paying the price and will continue to see things worsen. Thank you, Ms. Gabbard. I don't have a commentary to that because that's probably the truest that I've seen. Ukraine-Russia crisis, 7 big companies that could be hammered. From Brian Sozzi. Some very large multinational companies with notable exposure to Russia could see their sales walloped as the country moves to the brink of war, which is, by the way, going to affect your stock market with the Ukraine and the world's response with penalizing sanctions. This according to JP Morgan strategist Dubravko Lakos-Bukas, who crunched the numbers. 7 companies stand out from a list of 25 names compiled from the strategist at the risk to pressure, given at least 4% of their sales come from Russia and Ukraine. These 7. Silvamo Corporation, 16.6% of their sales. Kinross Gold, 14%. So there's your hard metal right there. I don't know what Silvamo does. Let's look. It's a paper company. So paper and gold. Arconic. Don't know what that one does. Philip Morris, so they're not going to be able to get all their tobacco. 8% of their sales come from Russia and Ukraine. Pepsi, Mohawk Industries, and McDonald's. you should try hard not to buy from these companies anyway, because they're big, globalist, multinational companies. Try local. Now, I know that gold is going to be a hard one to go back to do, but if you need something from some of these, try local and Pepsi. Stop drinking. Well, I can't say stop drinking soda because there's a glass full of Bang here, and if Bang was paying me for this, this would be in their cup or their can. I mean, the can's actually sitting right over there, but if Bang was paying me, it would be in their can, and I'd be drinking that on the air. And that is a Pepsi subsidiary. But still, go more local if you can. From Politico. And this has been interesting to see what this is doing on the stance of the culture war. Republicans descended to foreign policy factionalism over Russia-Ukraine standoff because, of course, we've still got the Liz Cheneys in the world, and I do think that this part of this is out there to try to save her career too. And the people like that who think that war is good for business, which in their cases it is. From Andrew Desiderio, Tara Palmieri, and Meredith McGraw. While Russia's reinvasion of the Ukraine this week stress tests the Biden admin, it's also forcing Republicans to confront their own divisions. The GOP is all over the map politically as Russian President Vladimir Putin tries to redraw his own boundaries. Former President Trump privately has signaled split with more isolationist voices from the MAGA wing of the party, who have excused Russia's aggression, who themselves are at odds with more establishment Republicans over how to confront Russian aggression, if at all. We call them war pigs. To an extent, these camps reflect a new evolution of long-standing GOP foreign policy factionalism, but as Putin moves troops into the Ukraine, Republicans' divergent approaches to the crisis are complicating their pushback on President Joe Biden's response to the crisis. Trump told an advisor recently that he doesn't think Putin should be able to take Ukraine, even just from a real estate standpoint, and that he thinks the Russian leader's current actions as an attempt to steamroll Biden, according to the person familiar with the conversation. Trump said Putin sized up Biden and decided that he isn't strong enough to stop Russia from rolling into Kiev. This person recalled adding that the former president has also blamed Biden for poking the bear by tying his legacy too closely to expanding NATO and Russia's Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline. Publicly and privately, he has described the current standoff as a problem for which he is the lone solution. He is not the lone solution. Holy shit. This never would have happened with us if I'd have been in office. Not even thinkable, Trump said in a Tuesday radio interview describing Putin's recognition of Ukrainian separatists as savvy. Putin sees this opportunity. I knew that he always wanted Ukraine. I used to talk to him about it. I said, "You can't do it. You're not going to do it," Trump added. But I could see that he wanted it. They say, "Oh, Trump was nice to Russia." I wasn't nice to Russia. Even as Trump portrays himself as better equipped to counter Putin, the majority of congressional Republicans are backing Biden's vow to impose crushing sanctions because they want to see the war on Russia after its troops entered eastern Ukraine on Tuesday. Some have even praised Biden's moves, like the deployment of additional U.S. troops to Eastern Europe to boost NATO's defenses. But a vocal GOP minority on and off Capitol Hill, represented by Josh Hawley, Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and Ohio Senate candidate J.D. Vance, among others, have taken a third path, actively arguing against any U.S. involvement in the region while still dinging Biden. They argue that expanding the U.S. commitment to NATO is a mistake and that the president should instead focus on countering China and securing America's southern border. The discordant chorus is making it harder for Republicans to craft a united message on Russia the way it did during last year's chaotic U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan during Putin's invasion of Crimea when Barack Obama was president in 2014. Conservatives in the third self-described America First camp contend that the GOP base is on their side, even as congressional Republicans are for the most part in line behind Ukraine and NATO, because they're globalists and war pigs, and they need to be voted out. There is a difference between what politicians think and where voters are, said Hawley, who's broken with his fellow GOP senators when it comes to supporting Ukraine. It won't be a friction point with voters because they made up their mind, but it will be among elected officials for a while. And that's the thing too, is like if you go on to Twitter, if anybody who supports Republican at all, they're characterized as just basically in lockstep behind the dear leader. I've already been called that twice today, as in lockstep behind the orange fucking Hitler. Which I'm not, obviously. But still, I still say that the best thing that Trump did out of his presidency, even better than the tax cuts, was, like Hawley's saying, on the ground, on the base, on the voting base. War is a dirty word among Republicans. I don't know how the fuck he did it, because I grew up in the Bush era. I remember how eager they were for war. I grew up in the W era. And the HW era too, but I was too young for that at the time. But I grew up into that. I remember how eager these fucking people are for war. And to make war a dirty word among the voting base, golf clap. Golf clap indeed. But that's what we see coming off of that. We got another one here from NPR talking again about the savvy amid escalations on the Russian border, because the orange Hitler praised Russia. He praised Russia for what they did. Even in a sarcastic tone, it's evil, and he wants to be a dictator for all of us. So make sure, if you want to prevent that dictatorship, you donate to NPR, National Progressive Radio, because the only proper dictatorship is a communist dictatorship, and we will spread our ideals and make sure that you get your communist nation. So send it out to us, NPR, National Progressive Radio, because it's not your money, comrade, it's our money. Former President Trump has praised Russian President Vladimir Putin's moves in Ukraine, calling him savvy after the Kremlin recognized the independence of two breakaway Russian separatist-controlled regions in eastern Ukraine. I went yesterday, and there was a big television screen, and I said, "This is genius. Putin declares a big portion of Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent," Trump said in an interview Tuesday with Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. The former president was referencing two rebel-controlled territories, Luhansk and Donetsk, which comprise a larger region called Donbass that borders Russia. The two territories have been led by pro-Russia separatists for nearly a decade. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine, and I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force, Trump said, adding that it was the kind of show of force the U.S. could use on the southern border. Now, I have not listened to this yet. I've not listened to any of this yet. I had a nice long conversation with John from Porch Boys last night, talking about this same topic, though. We were discussing that. Apparently, John has listened to it. And there were allegedly sarcastic tones off of that don't come off in text, which you don't see in tweet and you don't see in an article like this. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I do wish that he hadn't said that. It's just like when he said, in a stronger time, there would have been stronger consequences and this would have warranted the death penalty. Wasn't it NPR? It's the same thing? No, it was Newsweek that came up. Well, Trump said that his political enemies deserve the death penalty. And when he says stuff like this, people like NPR, National Progressive Radio, are right there to come out and say, well, he's saying that the dictator is a good person. Let's keep going. On other fronts here, China has sanctioned Raytheon and Lockheed over Taiwan deal. From the Associated Press. China has said Monday it will impose new sanctions on U.S. defense contractors Raytheon Technologies and Lockheed Martin due to their arms sales to Taiwan, stepping up a feud with Washington over the security and Beijing's strategic ambitions. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin announced the move at a daily press briefing, citing newly passed anti-foreign sanctions law that took effect in 2021. It was in response to a $100 million deal approved by the U.S. for maintenance of Taiwan's missile defense system by the two companies. China once again urges the U.S. government and relevant parties to stop arms sales to Taiwan and sever military ties with Taiwan. Wang said, "No, fuck you. If we want to see a gun behind every blade of grass in Taiwan, that's between the people that sell the weapons and the people of Taiwan. Fuck you." We're going to sanction Raytheon. Well, who's going to go back and sell you your Stinger missiles? You can always go back to Halliburton, I guess. But that's what we see foreign policy going from that side of the world, lest you forget that that's also going on right now. And that might come to a head as well as people start to push and stress test Biden, because he does look weak on the world stage right now from the blaze. Moving on here a little bit here, we're going to see if we can get through a little bit more of this before we head out of here for the morning, because we still have a lot. And I do want to make sure that we get to some of this here. This one was on the stack for yesterday and we couldn't get to it. How prominent public health agencies are skewing vaccine effectiveness statistics in the U.S. Hashtag DenominatorGate. The CDC and the New York Health Department are misleading us about the risk of being unvaccinated against pinko pox. They're doing this through two basic errors. First, they appear to be using outdated population estimates that grossly undercount the actual number of unvaccinated persons in the U.S. This leads to artificially inflated estimates of pinko pox case rates among the ever-shrinking unvaccinated population. Second, they appear to be counting every person for whom they cannot verify vaccination status as an unvaccinated person. In many cases, it appears that it is taking health agencies weeks, if not months, to properly match pinko pox hospitalizations with jab status. And we have no assurance that it's ever done properly at all. This has led to some jurisdictions quietly publishing significant corrections to their data weeks after initial publication and after the media and public health officials have already won with the erroneous numbers. This is leading to both overstatement of the case rate for unvaccinated persons and understatement of the same rate for unvaccinated persons. Yes, and one of the things too that you keep in mind is they'll give actual numbers, like the actual numbers of cases and the actual numbers of what they consider to be vaccinated, but they do a lot of this in percentage. And if they change the number of people based on the population size versus the number of people vaccinated, they get a completely different number of unvaccinated people. And then once you start to push that among the case totals as well, you start to get large statistical anomalies that make things look way more dire than they actually are. A re-examination of the data without these errors will show that while the pinko pox vaccines have been effective at reducing hospitalizations and death from pinko pox, citation needed please, their effectiveness has been grossly overstated in America. And they have some charts to go back with this. But again, we're sitting in a point where the big pharma companies, as billionaires, have a lot of say and a lot of interest in keeping Democrats and people who aren't going to go back after and try to promote capitalism and competition among their smaller competitors. They're making billions of dollars in profits, and I guarantee you, especially given the fact that the US government is their biggest customer right now because they're the ones paying the bill, and I would love to see the invoice on the vaccines. I would be willing to bet that there's quite the kickback coming back off these vaccines as well, but there again, I need to see the invoice and open secrets. And I guarantee you that both of those are going to be not seen until after the midterms. All right, what else do we have here? Canada is now denying bail to the organizer of the Freedom Convoy. They're threatening her up with up to 10 years in prison. Let's actually save that one, because I didn't grab an article to go with that, but I do want to look and see if I can verify that to be true. What else do we have here? So this was interesting. The Last Refuge on Twitter says, yay 185, nay 151. Canadian politicians voted tonight to support war against Canadian citizens. That's not exactly what happened, but it's closer than you might think. From Reuters. Canada's Parliament approves Trudeau's emergency powers. From David Youngren. Canada's Parliament on Monday backed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's decision to invoke rarely used emergency powers to end pandemic-related protests that had blocked streets in the capital, Ottawa, for more than 3 weeks. The Emergencies Act was approved in Parliament by 185 to 151, with a minority Liberal government getting support from left-leaning New Democrats. The special measures announced by Trudeau a week ago have been deemed unnecessary and an abuse of power by some opposition politicians. Over the weekend, Canadian police restored normalcy in Ottawa. The protesters initially wanted an end to cross-border COVID vaccine mandates for truckers, but the occupation turned into a broader demonstration against Trudeau and his government. Protesters blocked the busiest land crossing between Canada and the US for 6 days, snarling trade. Trust me, there are plenty of other land crossings there. They could have found another one. It would have slowed it down, but they could have found another one. Earlier on Monday, Trudeau told reporters his government still needs temporary emergency powers, citing real concerns about the threats in the days ahead. This state of emergency is not over. There continue to be real concerns, but in the coming days, Trudeau said. The act grants authorities broader powers. Police spent 2 days clearing protesters. Yeah, we saw that. 191 arrests, towing 79 vehicles. And now the country wants to nationalize the vehicles to pay for their excessive police force as well. But there again, Trudeau retains his emergency powers. From the Post-Millennial. Liberal MP says Hong Kong is code for Heil Hitler, cites Antifa as a source. My chair is too high. I can't reach my desk to bang my head on it. From Katie Daviscourt. Canadian's Liberal MP Yara Sachs said that Hong Kong is code for Heil Hitler. While testifying in Parliament on Monday in defense of Trudeau invoking the Emergencies Act to crack down on Canadian freedom protesters. Was it 4chan? 4chan, did you fucking do this? How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we need to see of Hong Kong, which is the new acronym of Heil Hitler? What do we need to see by these protesters on social media? Yara Sachs said. Oh shit, there's the video. There's the video.
How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we have to see of Hong Kong, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler, do we need to see by these protesters on social media?
Oh my god. Anything they can do to make it racist. We live in the stupidest fucking timeline. We really do. For those who think that Hong Kong is some innocuous joke, I'll leave this here, Sachs said in a Twitter post on Monday. Gwen Snyder, as uncivil, says, it's easy to miss. Nazi alt-right signifiers are if you aren't swimming in the cesspool of their time, which she missed up a modifier in that sentence, by the way. So this is going to be a running thread of what to watch for, with a special emphasis on vocabulary and symbols that should make you suspicious. Snyder wrote, let's start with the classic and new variant, 88 and HH phrases like Hong Kong. They mean Heil Hitler. H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and thus 88. Hong Kong is associated with the Honkler, and is often used ironically by alt-right trolls. So, The thing that always got me about this dog whistle, when I saw these truckers honking the horn, I saw more of Zach De La Rocha's cry in the mid-90s of "fuck you, I won't do what you tell me." But they are so desperate to tie anything that they don't like into alt-right, into racism, into anything, that they will search and find off of this. And it does always seem to be that it's only liberals that hear the dog whistle. Because I would have never thought in a million years to tie a honking horn or a clown to Hitler. But apparently they can go back and find it somewhere. Hey, pretty soon then we won't have the letter H anymore. From the Blaze. Time for the protesters to hear our jackboots on the ground. RCMP in a group chat allegedly celebrate violence against protesters. From Dave Urbanski. Hey, there's an image of police officers that I'm sure warms the heart of our pro-government friend Ron Helton right there. Isn't that what police are supposed to look like, Ron? Members of the RCMP in a group chat allegedly celebrated violence against Ottawa protesters, with officers making declarations such as "time for protesters to hear jackboots on the ground." The RCMP. I do love... No, let me read this first, and I will put these two in juxtaposition to each other. The RCMP issued a statement on the matter Sunday saying it's aware of the material circulating on social media pertaining to a chat group that includes some of its members, and we can confirm that we are looking into the matter. This material is not representative of those who have committed themselves to serving Canadians with integrity and professionalism. Rebel News posted screenshots of what the outlet said are RCMP members bragging about using brutal force against protesters as authorities began arresting truckers and moving demonstrators out over the weekend. In another message, the officer allegedly declared time for protesters to hear jackboots on the ground. Another message allegedly celebrated a video showing police on the horseback trampling protesters. Just watch the horse video, that is awesome. The same individual allegedly added, "We should practice this maneuver." Here's the video, presumably of that incident. Content warning language. Unless it won't load. Here's a video of it. Incident of a woman allegedly trampled. Let's see.
On the northern border, just across it, Canadian police there cracking down on the truckers' protest. Only a few stragglers remain in Ottawa after police in riot gear swept through Canada's capital, arresting nearly 200 protesters and towing off almost 60 vehicles. Authorities have now regained control of that area the truckers had occupied for more than 3 weeks. Grady Tremble, live on the street in Ottawa, with more on the aftermath of that protest. Hi, Grady.
Hey, Eric, we're expecting an update from police any minute now, but I just want to show...
Oh, it stopped loading. Let's see if the actual tweet... Yeah, there it is. Watch close up a peaceful protest in Ottawa mandating protesters be trampled. There we go. Yeah, they couldn't put the video on the Blaze side because you weren't signed in.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow, what is this lady doing? Trampling. Trampling horses. Trampling. Stop it. Stop it. Look. Oh my God. Oh my God. Fuck down. They just trampled this lady. They just trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. There's the lady. There's the lady that was trampled. Yeah, the lady got fully trampled with a horse. What the fuck is wrong with you? They just got crushed by a horse. Oh, come on.
So that's one of the things that we see off of that as well. And to me, this is really, really big to me. Because we see this here. And in a group chat, which of course we don't have screenshots for, so do not take this as gospel. Do check on your own research and do your own research to this. I don't use Rebel News on this particular program because it's not green check verified, but still worth it to do your own research off of. But as far as that goes, we allegedly have the police, the agents of the government, telling us that it's time for the protesters here at Jack Boots on the Ground, as we have an MP from Canada telling us that it's the protesters who want to hail Hitler. Who want to honk honk, and that means hail Hitler. I got a question. Who wore the jack boots? Because it sure as fuck wasn't the people that were protesting against the government. Alright, let's get a little bit more of this done here before we head out of here for the day. Yeah, I know we're up on the clock right now, so... from disclosed.tv, a video of it panning around. The Capitol fencing goes up ahead of Biden's State of the Union address. And we actually have people out here that are telling us that the fencing never came down, that's always been up, which is completely worse at this point, if that's true. But it's not true. They actually did take the fence down. We covered it on this program. They took the fencing down because they got too much criticism, or the fact that it looked like a military installation. But there's the low fencing. More fencing over there, which is not going to be totally effective either, by the way. I'm kind of waiting to see if they put the razor wire fencing back up over it. But yes, your capital, your seat of government power, the people's house in a free nation, is cordoned off and fenced off from the people. From the Hill, Pentagon approves National Guard deployment ahead of DC trucker convoy. So in addition to the fencing, and this is one of the ones that I found like right before I hit the live button today, Pentagon approves National Guard deployment ahead of DC trucker convoy. This is from Joseph Choi. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has approved hundreds of unarmed National Guard troops, honk honk, to be deployed in D.C. ahead of a truck convoy protest against the pandemic restrictions that is expected to coincide with President Biden's first State of the Union address. The DoD said that Austin had approved a request that had been made by the D.C. Metro Police and U.S. Capitol Police for assistance from the National Guard members. The people who live, work, and visit the district are part of our community, and their safety is our first mission priority, Major General Sherry L. McCandles, D.C. National Guard Commanding General, said in a statement. Our MPD and USCP partners have asked for help in ensuring that people can demonstrate peacefully and safely as we stand ready to assist. According to the DoD, approval will now allow 400 D.C. National Guard members to provide support at designated traffic posts, provide command and control, and cover sustainment procedures. Beginning at 1 p.m. on February 26, 50 large tactical vehicles will be placed at these traffic posts. On a 24-hour basis, the deployment has been approved to last through March 7th. So, there it is. The government is bringing the military in to fight against its own people. That is, if they are the own people, the citizens off of this. I am still suspicious of this. And again, I will tell you why I'm suspicious of this. It's not for the fact that I don't think that people should go and protest. They absolutely should. Here's the problem with this. In Canada, when they did this, first off, the government tried to come out and say, oh, it's nothing. No, don't worry about any of this here. Don't worry about that. It's just a fringe minority people, until the fringe minority people flooded the streets of Ottawa and shut the entire city down. And then now they're bringing out their army, their military, to come back and jackboot against the people off of this. But also what was happening with this is, at the time, they were protesting first against an in-place vaccine mandate to leave the country and then come back. The citizens were believing that they were going to lose 2 weeks of pay any time that they had to go back and bring something to the U.S. if they didn't want to get vaccinated. Which is, given the fact that if those tires aren't turning, you aren't making money, that's a valid concern. 2 weeks at a time, every time you have to leave the country, with spoilable goods in your cabin, or I'm sorry, in your cargo area. Sometimes you're on a time crunch. Sometimes you lose out on money because you can't go and get these certain refrigerated loads. Because if you're not vaccinated, you have to sit at the border and quarantine for 15 days. No. But they were protesting a mandate that was actually in place. The problem that I have with this particular demonstration is the fact that there's no more mandate. Now, I mean, if they're protesting on behalf of the healthcare workers, is that because they still have a federal mandate. But OSHA got their asses shut down by the courts. And anything else that they're doing, anything that's coming off here, is either would be a protest against a private company, which could be effectively taken care of by not transporting for said private company, or a local government, which could be like one of my friends did, my friend Saint did, back when he was still driving a truck, by refusing to go to California, a state that still has major lockdowns. And well, they're trying to move them out at this point, but at the time still had major lockdowns in there. Saint doesn't drive truck anymore, so I do feel a little bit safe talking about that. I know what he does now. I'm not going to tell you what he does now, but he doesn't drive truck anymore, I can tell you that. So either boycott, tell your dispatchers that you're not going to these certain states, and make them work to go find somebody who's willing to do that, or protest and refuse to take from the individual businesses that still have the mandates in place. There is no government mandate. I don't know what these people are, what they're going to protest at the government for, which kind of tells me, especially because it would be a quote-unquote copycat of what happened in Canada. I think this is set up to go get more people arrested, to go get more people up off the road, and to put a bigger strain on the supply chain that you can now turn back and blame against those evil Republicans that wouldn't get vaccinated. Those evil Trump huffers. I don't buy a goddamn word of this. And I'm really suspicious about this particular one. But that's what we see off of that. I'm going to do these last two, and then we'll do something I'm thankful for and head out of here for the day. We are up on the clock, and I got to run out of here as soon as we're done. But let's do these last two, and let's head out of here for the day. From the Blaze, Democratic lawmakers suggest seizing trucks if they form a convoy to clog the D.C. Beltway. Perfect time to impound and give the trucks to small trucking companies. Let us redistribute our wealth, first and foremost. Your company dispatcher, if this is actually true, your company dispatcher is not going to allow you to take their company truck into DC. The people that own these trucks that are going in there already are small trucking companies. They're already independent owner-operators. Or a small company that, it's already going to be a small company. Your night transportation, your CR England, your things like that, your Swift, they are not going to approve you taking their truck to go clog DC. And if you think that they are, you're out of your goddamn mind. So I don't know what it is that this lawmaker thinks that he's going to do, but we're going to go find out, aren't we? Just like the one in Canada, where people were talking about going up there and supporting the Canadian protesters going up there. If you think your dispatcher is going to let you take that truck across the Windsor Bridge, if you're working for a big company, you are stupider than fucking stupid. From Alex Nitzberg, As reports indicate, the trucker convoy will likely descend upon Washington, D.C. area. Democratic Rep. Ruben Gallego of Arizona has suggested the trucks should be seized. Because of course he did. In light of reports that a convoy could target D.C.'s Capital Beltway this week, Gallego, who served in Congress for more than 7 years, suggested seizing trucks. Perfect time to impound and give the trucks to small trucking companies looking to expand their businesses, Gallego tweeted. Bob Bolus, a trucker convoy organizer, told Fox 5 DC, "We'll be along the Beltway, where the Beltway will be shut down." He also noted that a lane would remain open to allow passage for emergency vehicles. Conservative radio host Dana Lash responded to Gallego's suggestion that trucks should be seized, noted that such an action is also known as theft, like taxation. Shocking, the Democrat wants the government to just steal people's property, another Twitter account declared. Typical Democrat, never pass up a chance to steal what other people have earned, someone else tweeted. Any convoys that show up in D.C. region would come after people in Canada recently engaged in blockades in that country, though some participants were arrested and those demonstrations have been quashed. The mayor of Ottawa has said that he inquired with the city manager about how the trucks towed from the protest could be seized and sold to cover cost, incurred in connection with the demonstration. So this is a little shorty, of course, but still, I mean, there it is. There's the actual side of it. Hey, these people don't like us and they want to protest against us, so let's seize what they have and redistribute their wealth. Which, once again, the big companies, the big trucker ones, they're not sending their drivers out there for this. And if they do try to send their drivers out, or if their drivers do actually try to go out there and do it on their own, their Qualcomm will get shut down. They will be informed that they no longer drive for the company, and they will be told to get a cab and make their way home. And if they continue to drive the truck, it will be considered theft. The vast majority of the people that are going to be down there, if this is an actual grassroots protest, are going to be owner-operators, independent drivers. But I am right on the edge of saying, stay away from this protest. Because there's no mandate for them to protest right now. And I'm very uncomfortable with the direction that this is going. Because I don't want to see the government get the more power because of it. And with that, I want to do this last one here. Because we did go to talk about this yesterday, and this is probably part of the reason of the 12-cent jump in gas from when I went and filled up yesterday. From Fox 8, out of New Orleans, all clear given, 1 injured in Marathon refinery explosion. Emergency crews are on the scene of a reported explosion at the Marathon refinery in Garyville. A spokesperson for Marathon Petroleum says a fire began after an explosion around 9:30 a.m. on Monday, February 21st. The sheriff's office says employees heard the explosion in their offices. Witnesses reported hearing the explosion miles away. 1 contract worker was transported to the hospital with an injury, a spokesperson for Marathon said. The explosion was contained to the Marathon property, Sergeant Mike Trieger confirmed. Trieger gave the all-clear around 10:45 a.m. and reopened roads near the site. Air monitoring has been deployed. So, this is going to put a big hit in the supply chain. Hopefully they'll get everything going back up and running and operations moving once again, because we really don't need another chink in the supply chain of fuel in this country, which will put a chink in the supply chain of everything else in this country. We don't need that right now. But it looks like this was all good. This was quick. Nobody was injured. And we'll be able to get back to regular operations pretty soon. So we saw this not on trending. We saw this at the top of the show that there was the explosion with the finance yesterday. And I didn't want to talk about this to make sure that you were made aware of this if you see prices start to increase by you. But right now, by the way, and I suggested this to everybody else too, even if you have a small car and you only have like a 5-gallon tank in your Honda Civic or something, fill up now. I just went back and filled my truck up to the very, very tippy top yesterday because with things that are going on in Russia, I do fear that we're going to have bigger gas prices coming off of this. And with that, we're going to head out of here. But before we do, it is Wednesday, and we are going to do something that I'm thankful for. Because it's always important to come back out and close, because we talk about such bad news. It's always important, at least once a week, to reflect on something that really makes you thankful to be in the world. And I always want to come back and do that for you guys. And give you guys an introspection to what I'm thankful for, so you can look into your own lives and remember what it is that you're thankful for as well. I know many of you have children, and I know I'm thankful for that, and I know you guys are probably thankful for your children too. I don't. I'm not even married. But let's grab onto this and see. So one of the things that I've noticed, and we're actually going to go back to the Russia thing for a second, and the Politico article that they talked about when they said, you know, this is going to be a Republican Party foreign divide on foreign policy. Like, if you watch Twitter, like I have for the last couple days, just to get news stories off of it, you've started to notice right now that Democrats are in deep lockstep with each other. They're in major lockstep. Because they only want to do what it is the mainstream media tells them to do. And I'm talking about the Biden Democrats here, because the progressives don't want the war any more than the rest of us do. They might make a little bit of an alliance here and there, but the people that are saying that they want war, they're not progressives. The people that are saying that they want the war are corporate Democrats that are owned by the corporations and are spreading out the message to try to justify this out for Joe Biden, because they've been propagandized to for the last 5 years that Russia installed the demon Trump into the White House and caused them the agony and the anguish that they had to go through for 4 whole years. Oh my God. He might lower our taxes. He might, but he's going to sell us down the river to Russia. That kind of shit. But what I'm thankful for is to see, and I'm 38, I'll be 38, not this coming month, but the next month after that, at the end of April. Which means that I'm old enough to remember, and was just coming to adulthood during the 9/11 attacks. And while I do look at that and say, okay, we needed to do something about that directly, because that was a horrifying attack on our soil. And I do believe 75% of the narrative that went around with 9/11. I do have some other questions about that, saying that was just an independent thing. I do believe that there were politicians involved in that, but that aside, I do believe the towers fell. I do believe that they were hit by an airplane. I've run the physics. I understand how physics work, and I understand how, we're not going to go into trutherism on that right now. But what I do say about that is it's the societal impact of that, because at the time, everybody in America, Democrat, Republican, otherwise, and I'm from a Democrat house. I'm from a union house. Democrat, Republican, otherwise, independent, we're all saying the same thing. To war, they say. I mean, even some of the LP people were yelling out, to war, because this was a direct aggression and needed a retaliation. To war, they say, and it was so easy. And after that, too. At the time, there was Democrat pushback at the time, but Republicans were lockstep behind Bush. To war! Let's go to Iraq, because they might have had something to do with this. And it might have been Saddam. Let's go back and do this. And while I see that there is still an avenue of Biden people who are yelling to war, progressives who remain thankfully anti-war, they're still communists, and I can't get behind their economic agenda, but they remain isolationist, thankfully. And a growing number of Republicans on the ground are saying, wait, we don't want to go to war. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that war is becoming more and more of a dirty word in this country. That we shouldn't be doing it left and right. And that's going to push these Liz Cheneys out of office, the Mitt Romneys. It's going to keep Bushes from being able to be elected. As more and more people look at this and say, why do we keep going to war? George Carlin said it all the way back in the end of the 90s. This country is only a little bit over 200 years old, and we've already been in 10 major wars. We average a major war every 20 years. So I'm thankful that the position is shifting, that we want to come back and defend what's going on at home. I know that there are going to be the corporates, the corporate Republicans, the neocons, and the neoliberals as well, who will consume whatever CNN tells them to and say that we need to be into this war right now. But that is a shrinking number, and I'm happy for that. I'm very, very happy for that. That restores my faith in humanity, and it makes me very thankful. And with that, we're done. We're going to head out of here. Throw some outro music up here. Come on. There we go. So, with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. I'm going to get myself, because I held off until after 9:30, which means I pretty much got to throw boots on and get my ass out the door. But we're going to head out of here for the day. We'll be back here tomorrow with more headlines, more news. Remember, no Daily Ignoramus today and probably for the next couple weeks, but do follow along with his Twitter. And if you're in his Discord as well, alerts in the Discord to tell when he's going to throw up a live stream, because it looks like he's going to probably be doing some of those from the ground as well. So go and check that out. It's going to be a great time with him over at the American First Political Action Committee. Go join him at that. Otherwise, come back and join us here tomorrow for more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.